neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at the Curt A20 fifth wheel hitch for an OEM Ford Prep package. So what does that mean? If your truck has the OEM puck system and it's a Ford, this is going to drop directly in to those factory spots. You'll be able to latch that in place and be on your way. Now the A20 comes in two different configurations that are potential for your truck. Both of these are OEM prep for Ford. One of them has legs that are directly designed for it, so you can just simply drop that in. The other one is on adapter rails. So this one in particular is going to be just a standard fifth wheel that goes into ISR rails or any rail kit. Now, the adapter that comes with it is going to allow you to not only attach it to a Ford truck, but also if you swap where the handles are just with a couple bolts, you're going to be able to hook this up to a GMC or a Chevy. So that's really cool if you ever plan on going to a different make of truck, or if you already have rails in another truck and you want to share this same fifth wheel, this is a really good option. You're not just limited to an OEM Ford puck package like this one. So it gives you a little bit more adjustability and really opens up to what you can attach it to. But if you do have an OEM prep Ford and you plan on keeping it for a while, I'd probably go with this one here, because that adapter rail is one more thing that you'll have to load up and unload each time you take it out, and it also raises it up 2 inches. So minor in the grand scheme of things, but it really comes down to what are your future goals. So again, if you have an OEM prep that you're going to keep, go with this one. My personal take, if you have a Chevy, or maybe you will get a Chevy later down the road, or a GMC, you can go ahead and get this one, and you're going to get the same capacities and all the same features of the Curt A20. This is a great option for those of you that are looking for a capacity of 20,000 pounds, because as the 20 in the A20 leads you to believe, this is rated at 20,000 pounds for your gross trailer weight rating with a 5,000 pound vertical load limit. So overall, pretty middle of the road, but slightly more on the heavy duty side. Now, if you need something that's going to be larger than this, they also make the A25, which is very similar, but with higher weight capacities. But what we have here is going to be a fixed version, meaning there's no sliding available, and that's great for a long bed truck like we have here today. If you have a short bed Ford, you may want to take a look at getting a sliding option that Curt offers, and that way when you make tight turns, you can slide that back and have cab clearance. That way your trailer isn't going to be hitting the cab corners of your truck making those tight turns. So if you've decided that a fixed one with those capacities are going to be a great option already, that's great. We got that covered, but let's take a look at some of the features that make this stand out a little bit compared to some of the other fifth wheels out there on the market. And one of the ones that really stands out with this series is going to be the indicator on the back. And that's going to be really important for those of you that are hooking up by yourself and really don't have that sense of confidence that it's perfectly latched and properly ready to tow down the road. This takes the guesswork out. There's pretty much a go, no-go gauge to let you know exactly where this locking mechanism is and whether or not you're safe to couple or just tow away. Either way, you'll have that visual indicator. The indicator is going to face towards the front of the vehicle, so you can see it from the side of your bed, or even as you're backing up, you may be able to see this in your rear view camera. And as you can see in our yellow, that's going to be couple. So that's basically at a state where, hey, we're ready to hook up. And so here I have just a simulated kingpin as we will be hooking this up to our camper. Also included, while I simulate this coupling, is going to be a lube plate. That's a cool addition that Curt offers, and that way you're not having to grease up the top of your head. It's going to go in place over the kingpin, so that way when you slide in, it's going to be nice and smooth, and as you rotate, it's also going to rotate well on the head. Other options are putting grease on here, which can be a pain, especially if you plan on loading and unloading this out of your truck quite often. To not have to deal with as much grease is going to save you a little bit of getting dirty, but the lube plate, really nice that they include that. So as this latch is in place, we'll see that it's going to go from that couple to a position that is green, which means that we are ready to tow. Now there is going to be a pin that you're going to want to lock in place on the handle, but that nice ka-chunk sound and green means that you are successfully hooked up. Now there is one other color, so as I pull my handle back just a little bit, immediately it goes to red, which means it's uncoupled. So at that point, I know I'm not safe to tow. And it's really only when you don't have that pin in place. The pin and that green will give you that nice, surefire that it's hooked up. And again, the red, it doesn't take much for it to swap over to that. But again, before you hit the road, if you see that red, you need to stop, make sure it's latched in place properly, and then you'll be good. So indicator, definitely cool. So let's get this popped out. We'll take a closer look at the jaw mechanism as well as the rest of the head. So this is a nice solid way to get attached to your kingpin because it's a 2-jaw motion and it's going to go 360 completely around it. So in order to get this in place, you will have to have the kingpin to pop it in. Just using the handle is not going to do anything. It needs that pressure against it to lock in place. But as you saw with that kingpin in place, when it wraps around, it's completely 360 degrees. So that's going to be nice and secure. It's also going to cut down on any chucking or shaking around in this to cut down on noise. So great, sense of security here once it's all latched in place. And then the features continue. Now when it comes to hooking up or even just towing down the road, you do have quite a bit of flex in the head, and that's going to make it easier to contour. So not only do you get forward and back motion, but side to side. So that's going to really take away a lot of that jarring hits, a little bit of that porpoising that you might get while driving and chucking. And it's done rather quietly. So they have a urethane that's inside of here that the head will sit in, and that's going to cushion that and give it that flex. So with that being said, let's pull this head off. And that's another feature that's really cool because when you want to take this out of your bed, it's really heavy. But if you can separate the two weights of the head and the base, that makes it a lot easier to get this in and out. So definitely a cool feature if you do plan on, going back to just a full truck bed when you're not towing. You can take this one out fairly easily by yourself, whereas some of the other ones, that's not the case. They're extremely heavy. This is still heavy, but again, being able to take this large portion out will make it a lot easier. So to do that, we just have a linch pin here on the front and then a long pin with a handle on the back that I'll pull out. And then from there, that absorbing material that gives it that flex, you're just going to kind of wedge this back and forth until it slides out, and now your head is separated. Now with the head taken out, this will give us a few different things that we can look at. First, the height adjustment. There's going to be 4 different settings that you can adjust this to, and it's just going to be bolting it all up to the legs. And they're going to be in 1-inch increments. So when I have this all assembled, it'll be at 17 inches high. You can go as low as 13. So that way you can measure your coupler or your kingpin on your trailer and get it dialed in. That way you get a nice level towing experience. So pretty easy to do that. Just keep in mind, you're going to have to make those increments, you'll have to unbolt it each time. But once you get it dialed in, you should be good to go. Now, as far as getting this out of the OEM puck system or attaching it, super easy. We just have to go to each side to get the handles undone. We'll have a linch pin, and the handles, when they're in this folded in position, is going to give you a quick indication that it's latched in properly because there's a welded plate here with a hole, and if this pin can go through it all, that's going to mean that it's locked in place. So to undo it, you'll just simply pull the handles to a perpendicular fashion here. There is a stop, so you can't really overdo it. So just open these up and get the other side as well. And then from here, you should be able to just simply lift it out. Our attachment points into those OEM pucks, you'll see it's relatively loose here, and that's kind of by design because when we put this back in and we're ready to latch it all up, you do want to make sure that it's going to be the right tension. So to drop it in, we'll just open these back up to the perpendicular fashion. We hear that drop in, and then when you go to tighten this down, you're going to find this one's pretty loose, so I can just flip that kind of over. That's not exactly what I want. I want it a little bit tighter just to kind of cut down on any potential movement in here, because even with this locked in, you can see that movement. And you can dial that out by just pulling the cotter pin and then adjusting the castle nut. Really just one increment each time. Just do that until you get just a little bit of tension. You should get a little bit, but you don't want to have to fight this on. And keep in mind too, when your puck system's new, more than likely it's going to be a little bit tighter than after a couple of years of towing, just as those tolerances loosen up and some of that powder coat finish gets knocked down. So you may need to adjust this later on, but for your first time, again, this one I'm pretty happy with. It's got just enough tension. It kind of holds that in place. And you can see the alternative here. So really quick adjustment. You really shouldn't have to do too much after your first initial, maybe a couple years down the road, but super easy to drop in. And you'll just slide the pin through all three, latch that up, do the other side, and then you'll be good to go. Now, many times you want to know how it's going to interact with your truck if you have other stuff in here. So if you have a toolbox or a tonneau cover, this being a long bed, there's really no issue. Even with the handle all the way back, I don't foresee any issue as far as clearance from a toolbox. And tonneau cover wise, we have an aluminum one that's pretty well flush with the top. So I'll roll this back and we'll see how much space we have. So having this in the highest position, we still have plenty of room. So I mentioned that I had it at 17 inches. It's more actually coming in at about 18, but still no worries because we have 20.5 inches on our Ford today. And generally that's going to be the case for most trucks. We really don't run into many issues at all with them making contact with the tonneau or not being able to close it up. So if that is a concern of yours, not to worry. And honestly, having a tonneau cover, especially if you plan on leaving your fifth wheel in the back, is really nice because it'll keep it out of the elements when you're not towing. So kind of taking a look at this at the end of the day, it's got a lot of good features. It's going to be good for 20,000 pound capacity. You have the indicator that's going to let you know if you're properly latched up, and it's got a nice finish. It looks good overall, and you can separate it. So if you plan on taking it out, you can cut down on that weight. So footprint wise, it's not terribly large, but with good capacity and all of those features that I just listed, I think this is a great option for you if you have an OEM prep on your Ford truck. So if you're kind of looking at a few different options and you come across this, hopefully this helps you decide if the Curt A20 is a great fit for your OEM prep package on your Ford.